You know, you talked about how when you were first getting piercings and tattoos, it wasn't all the rage. Soccer moms didn't have, we didn't have soccer moms then. I have a daughter, a teenage daughter, who has some piercings, and when I've gone with her, piercing parlors, they have this real psychological things.
Yeah. Well, I think that to sort of willingly go and modify your body is almost always attached to a deeply meaningful story for people. Not always, but quite often. And so I think it's a place where you're saying, I'm going to submit to another human being who's going to do something that's going to modify my actual body. And so there's an element of trust to it that can feel sacred in a sense, sometimes scary. And I think that there's, if we believe that Christianity is incarnational, it's important to pay attention to human bodies. And human bodies carry stories, and some of us choose to carry those on the outside and not just on the inside. And I think that's what you see in a lot of tattooing and piercing.
Yeah, and the people who are doing the tattooing and piercing, I've experienced them. It feels like they carry this as a sacred trust.
Absolutely.
So, do you think about what this rise in tattooing and piercing and body work says about this age we're in? Is there anything bigger going on?
Well, I think we're used to personalizing everything. This is a generation that grew up with choose your own adventure stories. They gotta choose how a book ended. They gotta choose, they gotta personalize their homepage, they personalize their Facebook, they personalize everything. And so I think it's the personalization of the body in a sense as well. It's like you used to just doodle on the outside of your trapper keeper, you know? And now, well, bless you for knowing what a trapper keeper is. Showing my age.
No, they still have them.
Yeah, oh, they do.
Yeah,
oh, thank God. And then I think we doodle on the outside. So I think there's a personalization of the body as well, because we're just used to that, you know.
I do my radio thing. I'm Krista Tippett, and this is On Being. I'm outdoors at the Wild Goose Festival in Hot Springs, North Carolina, today with Nadia Bolz-Weber of the House for All Sinners and Saints in Denver. Wild goose is a Celtic Christian metaphor for the unpredictable spirit of God. And this is a multi-generational gathering around music, justice, spirit, and art. So one thing I really like that you name and elaborate on in your book is a real reality check of churches, even your church, as a place that is going to disappoint people, where people will get hurt, because it's full of human beings.
Yeah.
And we all, we know that these things happen and they take us by surprise and they're so devastating because it's church. You've said, you're very clear that this community will disappoint people. It's a matter of when, not if. We will let them down, and I'll say something stupid and hurt their feelings.
And experience has proved that this is true. Yes. Yeah, I'm not idealistic about any kind of human project. I try and always keep that in check. I'm completely idealistic about God's ability to redeem our stuff and our mistakes. But I think if we aren't open about the fact that we've made them, that can be a barrier to experiencing that forgiveness and that redemption and that grace. So I think in a way, what might sound sort of cynical about, don't trust us, don't be too, don't be idealistic about this community or about me, to me, that just opens a door for grace in a sense. Because what I say to people, I literally say that at our welcome to house brunches. Like, I'm glad you love it here, but at some point I will disappoint you or the church will let you down. Please decide on this side of that happening. If after it happens, you will still stick around. Because if you leave, you will miss the way that God's grace comes in and fills in the cracks of our brokenness. And it's too beautiful to miss. Don't miss it.
Have you had experiences, what that looks like three-dimensionally, how that plays out, that you could talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to talk about specifics because I don't have permission from the people in my parish. But I can say that they are not unfamiliar with me apologizing for being wrong. And they have forgiven me many times for mistakes that I've made. And I'm exceedingly grateful for that. Also, I will say that I think that the fact that I don't find it a threat to my authority to say that I made a bad call or that I've made a mistake, I think that actually allows this population to let me have authority for them, if that makes sense. Because I feel like there's a lot of defending and protecting of authority that keeps us from apologizing when we're wrong or admitting that we made a mistake. And people see that. Like, here's the thing about admitting your mistakes. Other people see them, right? By pretending we didn't completely screw the pooch does not in any way keep other people from knowing that we made a huge mistake.
The theology question, I mean, how do you make sense of God in light of that? There's the theodicy question, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think that that really always comes down to my particular Christology, my idea of Jesus. Because I think a lot of people, when there's suffering, when there's tragedy, they say, where is God in the midst of this? And why did God allow this to happen? And I think that the way I view it is not that God is allowing suffering in some way, but I think God is always bearing that suffering. So to me, the most reliable way of knowing who God is by seeing how God chose to reveal who God is in Jesus Christ, a human being. It's much easier for us to understand. Most of God is unknowable, and we should probably be grateful for that. I'm like, it's in that I don't want to know. Right? But so if you look at Jesus, so to me the greatest revelation of who God was actually at the cross. Because to me, that's not God's little boy. Like God is some sort of divine child abuser sending his, son, and he only had one. Come on, give me a break, right? Like God's little boy, and he only had one, and as this sort of divine child abuser, or as this cigar-chomping loan shark demanding his pound of flesh, he's sending his little boy to what hogwash, right? That actually is God on the cross. That's God saying, I would rather die than be in the sin accounting business that you've put me in. That from the cross, there's all this stuff about the final judgment. You know what the final judgment is to me? It's God dying on the cross and saying, forgive them, they know not what they're doing. That's an eternally valid statement to me. That is God's judgment upon us. And so, to me, if God could bear that kind of suffering and only respond in forgiveness and love, that's the God who is present in a devastating hurricane, in that room with an abused child. So to me, God has come into the world and is bearing that, not causing it. Well, if you read, you'll notice in the book, I almost never talk about my children, which is very intentional. My editor tried to get me to write about my kids, and I'm like, this is not the life they chose. They didn't choose for their mom to be a public figure. So I really try to protect their privacy as much as I can. I mean, it's not like I'm, Angelina Jolie, clearly, but, but I do try and protect that. I can say that they've always been part of community, which I think is something that which is something I hope has really formed who they are. We are not the kind of family that does a lot of family devotionals. We don't pray together as a family. We don't do this faith stuff in our home. You know why? My kids are around it all the time. And so I just feel like they need a break at home, So I know it's a big deal to build faith in the home and do all that stuff. We don't do that.
Did they go to both of your churches?
Well, they always go to mine, and they occasionally go to Matthew's. They've been in confirmation at Matthew's church, but they always come to House of All Sinners.